Say it is. Right, and share the screen. Oh, oh crap. Let me hide that. It's not supposed to be a class. Yeah, it's wrong class. All right, let me go over and go to the modules here. And hopefully everybody's having a good day. And just want to start out showing where we are. Once again, today what I'm doing is finishing chapter 11, the supply chain stuff. This is where we are in the week. We are going to go over the rest of it. Make sure you do chapter 11. Other than that, pretty much straightforward, normal stuff. As mentioned, hopefully at least a few times, the technology evaluation will be due next week for on Wednesday at midnight for groups 1 and 2. And here is the link. Maybe I'll just go there real quick. If you go click here, it talks about, it gives the information about this, and this is the discussion page. Clicking on here will take you to the group, the outline that talks about what's supposed to be in there, and here's the requirements for you. So here's the here's what you need to do. And once again, each individual person, you need to review, watch the videos, and then provide one comment to each person. So I'm going to be looking for that as well. Hopefully it's all up there. I kept promising this, and I did have it in there. I just didn't have it set with the right dates and all the parameters. So now it is there as promised. All right. Trying to think, go back. Let me go back to the modules. Once again, we are here. All the recordings should be there. Everything. We're getting down to the end. I was like, I'm ready for a break. I don't know about anybody else. But here we are right here. Next week, I'll do chapter 12. Oh, as a reminder too, I probably should put a bar. I can put one of these blank bar looking things in here. I'll probably put a bar in here. Next week is chapter 12, but next Thursday, a week from today, if I'm not mistaken, is Thanksgiving. So there will not be, I will be not doing this session on Thanksgiving. Although I could, I guess, but I will not be making this recording. And the technology evaluation for, once again, needs to be done that Wednesday night. Hopefully you're not waiting till the night before Thanksgiving to do it. So, and there's this week will be groups 3 and 4, and then the last group will be groups 5 and 6. And so that should be it. Other than that, I think that is all the administration kind of stuff. I am now going to open up the PowerPoint slides. And if I'm not mistaken, this is where I left off. If anybody has any questions, go ahead and shoot them at me. But here's where we left off on supply chains. The last part, the first part of this was the information about customer relations, CRM kind of stuff. And so that hopefully nobody has any questions on that. I'm trying to readjust my screen here real quick. Sorry. All right, so jumping in, supply chains, and this is one of those classes you have to take. You have to take a whole course in supply chain. In this course, they used to have this as a prereq for supply chains. I think you can. I don't know that that's a prereq anymore. I think you can take supply chain, because my understanding, I've had a few students tell me that they've already taken it at this point. But this used to be, supply chain was like an overview of it, and then when you take the other class, they go in much more detail. The whole class talks about supply chain. So this is just a kind of high level reminder if you've already had it. And then if not, this is the information about what, kind of general information about what supply chain is all about. Interestingly enough, it used to be called, back in the day when I took all this stuff, it was called productions and operations management. But now it's called supply chain. I'm not sure exactly why it changed, but nonetheless, it is different now. All right, so supply chains. Basically, supply chains are flows of materials. It's the things we do in your business, or the processes you go through. When we talked about supply chains in chapter 2 with Michael Porter talked about the how you look at it and use models or frameworks to go through and analyze your supply chain, because obviously that's what we want to do, to look at the ways and looking for a strategic advantage. So supply chains, your flow of for your product or service. And we're going to talk, there's different types of supply chains. It could be a traditional thing. You make a product, could be data, could be financial kind of stuff. We're going to talk about those in detail in one of the future charts. And these are lead in. These are the things we're going to talk about: visibility, the concepts, and some of the different components. So let's move to the next chart already. All right, so this is kind of a generic supply chain, kind of just an illustration to kind of talk about what a supply chain looks like. Very typically, and it kind of defines the terms, very typically you have suppliers. I'm the manufacturer, let's say. I build, once again, let's use my favorite example. I build a desktop or a laptop or some kind of PCs. So I'm a manufacturer. Well, upstream, and that's why the arrow points here, we have suppliers. We have, suppliers who give us stuff. And so, what do we do is basically I say, I need cases, or I need the screen. I need all these different pieces. And so I get them from my upstream suppliers to use them. And then I manufacture them, and then I send them downstream to a distributor, retail, customer. These are the traditional method for how we do the supply chain work. And this example probably is more, generally looking at a production, and it's easy. In my simple brain, it's easiest to look at this, understand it anyway from a manufacturing business. But as I said, we'll talk about, there's other supply chains, other types of supply chains, not just necessarily building things. There's also other types, and so I'll get to those in just a minute. All right, so let's go jump down. Yeah, this kind of just, I already kind of covered a little bit. I just looked at the chat. Stephen, is the final going to be our last midterm? Yeah, the final will be the last few chapters. I call it a final. It's going to be the same format, but they're all the same. Just I call them midterm because they're they're not at the end. But it's going to be the same. It's going to be chapters, I believe, 10 through 14. This one, the last one was 5 through 9, right? It was 1 through 4, 5 through 9, 10 through 14. So yeah, it'll be the last one. All right, so in upstream, internal, and downstream, like I said, upstream are the things that are going to the left that we saw on that chart I got by from suppliers. Downstream would be things that are, things getting it out and how I get it out to whoever I'm providing thing. And internal supply chain are the things I do internally to produce my product and or service. All right, so moving on, that's kind of redundant. All right, so that's some of the different types of components as promised. There are different types of these things. And one of the things, and going back to that chart again, there's tiers of suppliers. I don't know if I can jump back here. This diagram kind of shows tiers of suppliers. I'm a manufacturer. Let's say I manufacture my good old friends, the PCs. One of the things I do is I'm as part of the manufacturing, I got to buy these things. And if you're not familiar, the motherboard is the primary board, integrated circuit board. It's a circuit board with all those little chips and everything in it. So as a manufacturer, let's say I just buy my motherboards from somebody. And so I buy it from these guys, tier 1 guys, let's call them company A. And they're the ones, let's say these guys are the ones who actually manufacture the motherboards themselves. And in their supplies and the way they build it, one of the things they have to do is, they don't necessarily make all the chips that go on there, a CPU, the resistors, capacitors, all the different types of components that are soldered onto the board. They probably buy, and they may buy from somebody upstream who makes the CPUs, the person who makes all the different things, and I'm not going to get you into the details of all the different parts. And likewise, they may buy from somebody else. So you may have tiers of suppliers. This may not just be one guy, but there are tiers, and that's what we call as you get further and further upstream. Let me jump back now where we were. I think we were here. All right, so you may have tiers of suppliers. It may not just one. Pretty straightforward. A lot of I think it's intuitive that you would think things are made and then you sell them as they go. A different type of flows in a supply chain. The first one here is material flows. Material flows, very traditional kind of stuff. Physical products, raw materials. I buy things on it, and in order to make it, and material flows are more typically the regular manufacturing of something. It could be, I manufacture vehicles, so you buy. Once again, you go upstream. You buy, if I buy the frame, I buy the metal or whatever, and then I got to buy an engine. The engine has all these components. Somebody upstream from them gives you all the components for the engine. So that, material flows are more typically the traditional manufacturing kind of activities. Um, all right, so information flows. The next one, and this one hopefully is somewhat intuitive. We also have now, and especially now that we're in this thing called the information age, we have information flows. We create, as we've talked about several times in this course, we create lots and lots of data, and we use that to generate information. And that information then can be used for marketing, for other things. As an example of an information flow, when I was at the assessor's office, several years ago, one of the things in the assessor's office is they have what they call a characteristics file. The characteristics file contains all the information about all the properties within San Bernardino County. For example, my house here, how many bedrooms, baths, beds, baths, square footage. It has information about what kind of air conditioning I have. It has information whether I have a pool or not. It has information on everything relative to what I do, what I have on in my property. And that's the information they use when they go to do an assessment. They say, okay, what does this house contain, so they can establish what value it has. So we have all that information in there. And one of the things that we do, that is, we are obligated, because it's a public entity, to make available some of that information. And that information is, and for an example, we used to get people that would ask all the time, pool companies, like I mentioned pools a second ago, what kind of pool I do or don't have. Pool companies would come to us and say, hey, I want all the houses, or the addresses for all the houses within a certain region, usually maybe a city, or the boundary between this street and that street, bound it, give me some kind of a geographical boundary, and say, I want all the addresses of all the houses that have pools or jacuzzis in them. And usually those were people who were they clean pools, or they do some kind of maintenance for pools. So they would ask me, and what they would typically ask for is, and we would sell them also. I don't know if they still do this today, but we would sell them in the mailing label format, so they can get them, and a lot of times then they can just print out on labels, and what they want to mail to them, to say, hey, here I'm ABC pool service. I'd like to provide service to you. So that was one of the things we did. That's an information flow. We have this information based on our need, or to produce or generate value of the property, but we also have this stuff, and we made it available, and we would sell it to people, whoever wanted, all the different stuff. As it turns out, that whole characteristics file, we had companies that would come in and buy the whole characteristic file to use that for that aggregate data that we talked about earlier. So they would take our whole characteristics and aggregate that. The LexisNexis and the likes of those types would buy it from us. So that's an information flow. The last one here, or the next one, financial flows, and there's many other types of flows. These are just examples of types of flows. Financial flows, as you're probably well aware, we have money that transfers between banks, financial institutions, different, Walmart, Target, all these different places. They have, they collect money on a regular basis, and money gets transferred around. So there's also financial flows that of how money gets transferred from one organization to another. All right, so let's move to the next one. All right, so the five basic components of a supply chain management. The first thing we have to do in a lot of cases is, and once again, to our simplicity, and I think to help maybe understand this stuff a little better, I'm going to use a manufacturing kind of supply chain. The first thing we have to do is plan. One of the things we have to do is we say, oh, okay, I am going to build these things. What are the different parts we need? And if you recall, we talked about back in the ERP stuff, we plan and we say, okay, what are all the pieces on a, I'll use my desktop computer as an example. Okay, as part of my planning, this is the way I want to configure it. I want to build, I need a case. Maybe I want to offer 3 or 4 different kind of cases. Maybe, and I want to use this kind of a motherboard. And on that motherboard, maybe I'll have 2 or 3 different types of CPUs options for it. So I have to plan and figure out exactly what it is, what components, or what are the things I need or I want to offer for that. And I put together a list. And usually within that ERP system that we have, it keeps track of what everything is, so that we can then order and do all the things that we need to do, like in the next one, sourcing. So I know what I need. I know what I want, but now how do I go out and get it? So what I need to do is then I just source the information. I go out and say, okay, these 3 vendors I'm going to put out, typically to bid. I'll say, okay, tell me, I need cases. Cases are an easy thing to talk about. I want these form fit, these size cases that this is what I want to offer to my customers. So I go out and say, tell me how much, I'm going to buy 100 of these, 2,000 of these, I don't know, some number of them. Tell me how much you're going to charge me, or how much it's going to be. And you may ask, you may go sole source, one to one person, you may go to several, but basically you're going to ask and find out what's going to cost. So now we source all of our stuff, we get all of our stuff done, all our stuff in inventory, and then we're going to make it. We have to go through and do the internal kind of stuff. We put it together, we pull it off, out of inventory, put it on the production line, put it together. And if you're doing it, fairly, letting people customize it for you, you're doing it based on a specific order. Or however, you may have, large organization, your targets, Walmart, Costco, all of them, and say, okay, we want basic, give us 10,000 of these things that look exactly like this, because this is how we want to sell it. This is how we're going to market it. So now we make it, we put it into boxes, or we package things up, and then we have to deliver it to whomever, Costco, the large big box places, or the smaller places, whatever. So now we have to deliver it. And the last piece of a supply chain, always one of the things unfortunately, returns. Sometimes, you need to have a process in your supply chain for that, return for whatever reason. Sometimes, you may put a bad component. When you're sourcing it, you got somebody who's not exactly high quality, and so you get returns. Could be that in transfer, something happened, it fell off a truck or something, and the box gets mangled up, and so then it doesn't get delivered, and so whoever gets it wants to return it. And I would say that's, the delivery people, I don't know, my experience with delivery people, they've done pretty well. A lot of times it's, if something gets broken in transit, it's usually they don't package it very well. I could be wrong. That's just my experience. Most of the time when I get something that's, broken on the inside, it's like, what were they thinking when they package this thing? So, but that's one of the things you have to think about up here in that planning, and how you're making all this kind of stuff. You've got to make it durable, depending on whatever delivery route you're planning on sending it. All right, moving along. Inter-organizational information systems. All right. All right, inter-organizational. Once again, inter-organizational. Inter meaning between 2 different organizations. I always differentiate. Intra is within an organization. Inter between 2 different organizations. So you have partners, these vendors, these people that you work with externally. And why do we want to do that? And this is becoming bigger and bigger, and we're doing it lots more. And we're going to talk a minute about some of the methods or how to do that in our supply chains. The reason we want to do it is reduce the cost of business transactions. Back in the good old days, back in the, before we had this information age and we can transfer information between, a lot of the times the way we did stuff was okay, I'm gonna go back to I guess maybe I shouldn't use PCs, because a lot of the stuff was probably before PCs, but nonetheless. All right, I'm going to build all these, and I need cases, I need motherboards, I need all these components, all these things that are in there that I keep using an example. And before we had the ability to make the request, or get quotes electronically, call up on the phone. Hey, I'm gonna this is ABC PC builder, and I need to I want 1,000 cases of for PCs. So then there would be some discussion, tell you about what kind of the form factor that you want, and then they would say, okay, in a lot of cases they would say something like, hey, okay, let me look into that. We got to see how much what our current what our current production line looks like and how soon we can get them and cost it out and all those kinds of things. But now with with systems that are connected together, it reduces the cost of that business transaction and that timeline dramatically. We just say you just a lot of times shoot out a message or put it out to your vendors, and they get it right away, and they have electronic means systems that can go through and say, oh, okay, based on our current workload, current pipeline, the what's what we're making for other customers as well. They can usually get you a quote fairly quickly, a lot more readily, because of the business analytics and the smarts we have now using in the data and the information. It improves quality of the flow by reducing and eliminating errors. As you can well imagine, I get on the phone and I'm talking to the person and I say, I need 1,000 of these things, and I really meant to say 2,000. So then they build their quote out for 1,000. I get so they mail me a quote or however they send it to me, fax it to me or something. I get in there, 1,000. I need 2,000. And I'm sure I told them 2,000. No, you didn't, knucklehead. And so that's why it reduces the number of errors, and and especially the finance part at the end. It gets electronically sent, and it really helps a lot. The next one compresses the cycle time. Like I said, now that we're doing it electronically, we're not calling and taking, okay, 2 weeks later you get that quote, or now things are very quick turnaround. Sometimes right away they can look it up, and the systems are set up. Boom, you get it right away, not a week or two later. Sometimes depends on what their turnaround is. Sometimes it's a day or two, but it really compresses and makes things faster. Once again, contributing to the faster product cycle time that we have. Eliminates paper processing. A lot of that stuff, like I said, a lot of times what we did, okay, I'm going to send you an invoice. I'll mail an invoice, and then this is how much you pay. A little bit of that still goes on, fax an invoice or something, or generate it. But most of the stuff now is being done by a electronic invoice, gets sent over, and automatically it gets given to the accounting department. They make the payments, and that all gets done, taken a lot quicker. And bottom line, it makes the transfer of processing of information easier for the users. The users don't have to do as much. A lot of this stuff, where if let's say in the example I had, I got to call up and I go, okay, how many do I need? How much is manufactured? It just, makes it easier. I don't have to double check with manufacturing. A lot of this stuff is automated. And especially when you're using something like an ERP system, boy, everything's tied together. And if it's designed and developed well, it will do a lot of the stuff for you. It makes it tremendously more easier for you. All right, so some of the different models or different ways we do these kinds of things. Let me advance my charts here. All right, the first one, the push model. The push model is also kind of called the make to stock model. The push model, production begins with some kind of forecasting. I say, oh, okay, I know that, using my favorite example of PCs, usually I get a little higher demand and PCs, laptops, any kind of mobile devices. The demand for them usually is a little higher, like the beginning of school, believe it or not. People start buying more. So if I manufacture my PCs based on the push model, I'm going to say, okay, what I'm going to do is I know on a regular basis, based on some statistics or some methodology that I'm using for forecasting, I usually sell about in the month of August. Let's say, month of August when school starts, either August, September-ish. Traditional schools, if you have a year on school, it kind of messes that model up. But so make the stock. So I'm going to make, I know that I usually get orders. We usually sell about 2,000-3,000 of these things. So make the stock say, okay, I'm going to predict this year I'm going to make 2,000 of these things, or, and actually I'm going to make 2,500 because just in case this year seems to be nuts. I'm getting a lot more this year, so I'm going to make them and I'm going to stock them. I'm going to put them in my warehouses so that I have them available if, hopefully that demand happens. So that's the push model, make to stock. I'm going to make a whole bunch based on some kind of statistical analysis. I'm going to make a whole bunch based and hopefully the demand is there. The pull model, on the other hand, is kind of the opposite. I am not going to make a whole bunch of these things. I'm not going to start making. My production line is not going to start moving until I actually get an order. So I have hopefully inventory for all this stuff readily, and we're going to talk about just in time in a minute. But how we have all this stuff, and I get an order for 2,000. Boy, hit the button, the logical button, not really typically a button. So all of a sudden, now we're going to start making these things because I have an order. I know, in fact, I'm going to sell these things, so I go. In some cases, the pull model, depending on how you work, you may not have inventory for all these things. You may say in a hard pull model, as soon as I get that order for 2,000 or whatever, my ERP, my systems start just automatically generating different requests for parts and start working with my vendors. And now I start making them as soon as I can. And if you have it designed real well, where that autonomy is there, very quickly make to order. Some of the advantages of the push model is that what happens if so you wait, the push model, now you have everything in inventory. You get an order for 2,000 of these things, and boom, you can start putting them on trucks, send them out, you're good to go. One of the downside is you have to have inventory, you have to have space for it, you have to store it, and that can be expensive. You have that footprint for it. And the opposite is true for the pull model. What happens? I get this order for 2,000, and oh my gosh, I send out, like let's say I even do my orders that way. My vendor, I call one of my vendors. Oh, we can't get you. We can only get you the cases 2 weeks from now. And you're like, oh my God, I got this person online. They need them by in a week. I can't wait a week. So that can be a problem with the pull model. Both of them have advantages and disadvantages. And I would say probably most organizations, there's some hybrid between the two. Like I said, a lot of times you'll buy stock, you'll have enough to start production. So you have some inventory, you have some warehousing of inventory. So you get an order, you can start making them. You may not be able to make them all, but you know that it'll take you, what we call lead time. Maybe you have lead time of a week or something on things. And so now you can start getting it. This is which is kind of all interesting. The whole COVID thing, it really set a lot of this stuff on its head. Because of COVID, businesses were shutting down. The different vendors, and especially as you got more upstream, nobody's working, nobody's making especially in computers. Some of the computer chips were not being made for a while. And so, boy, that's when things started getting expensive. We can't get it. Cars, same thing. Couldn't get parts, so it started taking longer and longer. And what does that do to prices? That shoots prices up because the demand was high, but the availability was low. So very problematic. And so it really messed with these. I think we're starting to get back to normal, or we're pretty much back to normal with these kinds of models and how you do stuff. But during COVID really opened our eyes to a lot of different processes, and we've had to rethink the way we do things and the way we use information to help us do them. All right, so some of the problems along the supply chain. Let me change my chart over here too. All right. Some of the problems, uncertainties, I kind of alluded to some of that just a second ago. Uncertainties, you think that you're going to have, you're going to be able to buy things on the regular, routine. And COVID, like I said, was a very a big factor in that. But you have other types of uncertainties. Personnel. Let's say you're more of a service provider and you provide technical consulting to somebody. Personnel problem can be a problem in your supply chain. My smart guy, all of a sudden, I don't like to use the term "get hit by a bus." I always think the more positive. The smart guy won the lottery and he's no longer available to us. Well, we got this now. We get a major. We have somebody that comes in and says, "Hey, we need a consultant to come in and analyze the way we do this. Maybe it's cybersecurity kind of stuff." Well, and now your primary guy for networks or something is no longer there, or for all those kinds of things. So those things in your supply chain could be problematic too. So that is one of the things. All those different things we have to look at what is involved. Equipment could break. We could have a major component in our, so we have our production line dialed in, and where it just hums along and makes things. Now we get this big 2,000, 3,000 order, we got to have it out in a week, and some major piece of equipment breaks. And, in a perfect world, you got to back up, you just fix it. You get a part. Well, what happens if your pipeline for that part, it's rare and hard to get? All those things are problems that can happen in your supply chain. And so one of the things as a manager, I'm assuming that that's what one of the things we want to do in here, is become managers or some higher level of in an organization. You need to think about what are the things, and once again, this gets back, this is all part for me, part of risk management. What are the risks? What happens if a smart guy leaves? What happens if a major piece of equipment breaks and we don't have the part? And we can't fix it easily. What happens if we can't get, so all those things? That's all part of risk management, and that's what we need to be doing as part of our supply chain. And then the next thing, the need to coordinate multiple activities, internal units, all that stuff going on. And this is kind of another, supporting thing for it really helps to have ERP systems too, because all those different activities from, the sales, somebody makes a sale. If you get the information and you have an ERP that tells you, hey, this guy just made a sale for 3,000 of these things. We need to do these, we need to kick in the ordering. We need to kick all that stuff, all those activities that run together, need to be well kind of orchestrated in between your different the parts of your organization. Demand forecast that could be very difficult. I guess, once again, good old COVID, man. It's a good example of these things. Very typically, on a regular basis, I know I'm building these PCs, during, like I said, during August, schools are starting, people are going to buy more PCs, or machines. And so now, I know, okay, I need to get ready, ramp up, be ready to start selling these things. And then all of a sudden, something weird, either COVID hits and we can't get parts, or people aren't going, they don't need new machines, or for whatever reason. So your demand or things just go different. That can be very problematic, and especially if you're doing the push mode where you make you're warehousing this stuff. I just made, I usually sell 2,000-3,000 of these things, so we're going to make a whole bunch, and we're going to have we have warehouse space, and now we don't get the demand. All of a sudden we have all these. Now what are we going to do? You may have to either deep discount them or something. It can become very problematic for you. So those are kind of things you got to think about too. Once again, good management kind of stuff to have to deal with, risk management kind of things. And the next one, the bullwhip effect. And I think my next chart talks about the bullwhip. It's a diagram, and I think it'll be easier to talk from the diagram. So I am going to jump to that. A little easier to speak to this chart anyway. The bullwhip effect, it goes something like this. And if you look here, they kind of do, this is actually upstream to the right, whereas in the one we did way back over here was upstream to the left, but that's okay. This is upstream. So I'm the customer, our customer sales. Here we are selling things. And this is, this line here represents our order quantity. So I'm getting orders to sell, whatever my widgets, whatever it is, over time, and you get some oscillations like this. Very typically, one of the things we do is, okay, just in case, I typically sell 100 a month, let's say. Well, just in case, maybe I'll get a run on it and I'll sell, maybe I want 10% more. I want to add 10% to my order quantity. So one of the things I do is now I'm going to order more of these things to make sure I don't lose an opportunity to sell something, what's called an opportunity cost. So I'm going to order more from my retailers. Okay, so I order more than I typically would, or to make sure that doesn't occur. Well, what are they going to do too? They're going to say, well, what if I got to make sure that I have more, I order more of these things to meet these guys' needs, because the last thing I would do is not supply it. And then as we keep going back further and further, you can see the wholesaler now, okay, I'm gonna have to meet his needs, so I'm gonna order more. And I'm going to order more from the manufacturers, my suppliers. So you can see, and that's what they call the bullwhip effect. You see it kind of oscillates, and the oscillations get bigger. And that's kind of, I guess, if you've ever seen a whip as the oscillations get bigger and bigger as you get closer to the hand of the person, or maybe it's way, I don't know. I don't know how bullwhips. I'm not, but that's what the idea is. As you get further upstream, they have to have more. And if something breaks along the line in this, now these guys have they're the ones who get hit the worst because they have had to do their accounting for the smaller oscillations here at the beginning. All right, so let's move along. All right, so some of the different techniques for some of the different information. Sorry, some the solutions to some of the things we showed earlier. All right, some of the using inventory to help it. Just in time, I kind of mentioned this, just in time inventory. One of the big things for organizations, they cost, the finance and accounting types will, talk to this a little bit. Inventory, we use the push model. I have to buy stuff to make it, and then I have to inventory, put it into a storage facility. Well, that inventory space can cost money. The space that you use for your raw materials, as well as the finished goods. So one of the things we want to do is maybe we can, with either model, we can use what we call just-in-time inventory instead of having, a whole bunch of raw materials on hand. Well, as soon as we get an order and you want to have an arrangement with your vendors, you say, okay, I want this stuff to arrive just in time. I get it right when I need it. I'm going to start my production line on Monday morning. And so Friday, Saturday, or whatever day if you take deliveries on the weekend, I want that stuff to arrive just before I have it. And so it makes it so that you can reduce that space. Obviously, the downside to that, if there's a hiccup somewhere in that delivery, that can really muck up the works. And so, this is kind of a tricky thing. And most organizations they do some form of just in time, but there's usually a little bit of planning in there, a couple lag days. So, okay, if we're going to get that, we want it 2 days before we really need it. We can handle a little bit of storage space, but for me, I don't do manufacturing kind of stuff, but I'd be, sweating it. I'd be like, if we don't got it, I'd be on the phone calling my vendors. So anyway, but that's the concept of just in time is you want to get it just right when you're ready to build or you're going to make it. The next thing, information sharing and vendor. I'm going to talk these two together, and vendor managed inventory. One of the things that's very helpful. I kind of talked in, ERPs or a lot of times have this kind of capability built into them. Information sharing. So, and as part of an inter-organizational tool, one of the things I can say is, okay, I use these. To make it simple, I buy power supplies for my the desktop machines that I built. So one of the things I'm going to do is I have XYZ power supplies guys, and I'm going to have them provide me. I'm going to give them access into my inventory for them. And so what they can do is they see, and you got to be careful with this stuff. You don't want them to have access to everything. Those of you cybersecurity types will say, oh my God, that can be dangerous if you don't control that. So once again, you need to control what they have access to. But I'm just sharing information on my inventory with my I think XYZ is what I said, hard power supply guys. So they can see that and they say, oh my gosh, they're down to, they can have their planning in place too. They're down to looks like they only have 20 left in inventory, and they usually use a good couple hundred a week. I'm going to gear up and make more of these, and maybe contact them, send them a electronic message saying, hey, I see your inventory is low, we want to ship to you. You may have an arrangement that says, hey, this is kind of both in the vendor managed, you may have arrangement, hey, if we go below 20 in a week, go ahead and manufacture and ship me 100 or something. You may have some kind of an arrangement with them where you're letting them manage it. Obviously, very, very helpful. You don't have to think about it, makes it very easy. Certain there are definitely, and you probably can think of issues that can arrive along that line. What happens if your relationship with that vendor goes sour? You decide I'm not gonna use these guys. Yeah, they send me these power supplies. Man, the power supply, I keep getting returns because the power supplies keep failing. Oh my gosh, now I got to break that connection with them. And usually that's very well integrated into your system. So breaking that connection, so that can be difficult. The best is that you got a nice smooth relationship, everything continues to go on. But those are the things you got to think about as far as how to solve some of these things, make it quicker, make your production line in the case of the manufacturing, make that more easy and make it smoother and faster. All right, so some of these other solutions and how we can do things more easily for information kind of things. The first one, this thing called EDI, or Electric Data Interchange. EDI is a protocol, and it's a standard a communication between different business partners, usually inter-organizational. A lot of the ERP or some of the manufacturing or some of the electronic systems that are set up have EDI built into them. It's standardized based on different industries. If you are, and I'm familiar, I have a friend who was in the medical profession, and he would tell me about how there's very standard part, everything that they buy in a medical profession has a specific code for it. And then if there's parameters for it, size, there's different, subcodes or whatever. And I don't know exactly how it works. I'm not an EDI expert, but I understand the fundamental concept of it. So you would say, so when you want to do those connections, hooking up your system with theirs, it's all based on this communication standard saying, okay, I need this type of a product, and their size or color or whatever. All that is well defined, so it makes it easier. I don't have to set up a system to help define that. Okay, we're going to set up, I'm going to have electronic, I'm going to set up a vendor kind of thing. It's built into the systems already. It's very well defined stuff. All right, extranets. An extranet, extra, is taking your, in this case, taking your intranet kind of concept. If you have an organizational intranet, which most of them do, the extranet is just now defining that space a little bit larger, saying, okay, we have our internet, and it's kind of what we're going to do is we're going to expand the definition of our intranet, or the stuff we protect with our, with whatever protocols we use, cybersecurity kind of stuff, however we or firewalls and all those things. But we're going to expand that. Now, I said, I've been talking. We want to maybe we're going to use let the vendors have insight into our stuff. So what we do is we create a methodology using extranet, using internet technology, and expanding and letting them use it. As I mentioned, one of the things we want to make sure, actually, I think the next chart is that. I'm going to go to the next chart. I just noticed my handy dandy little thing that tells me what's on the next chart. I'll drop it there, and I'm going to come back to extranet. But then there's also portals and exchanges. Portals and exchanges are places where somebody could go, and maybe you don't have a direct connection, but it's a portal. You can get information about it. And let me go over here. I have more on extranets over here, so I'm going to jump to that so I can talk more intelligently about it. So an extranet, once again, is allowing your vendors or people from the outside the capability in. And we talked about earlier, and I don't remember what chapter, but with these things called VPNs, a virtual private network. VPN is a methodology. It is a way to allow other people into your network. And what it does, I'm not going to get too much into that's for the other classes to do. But a VPN basically is creating this thing, what we call a secure tunnel, using all kinds of protocol, and to make sure, what it basically does is make sure that you are who you're supposed to be, and we are going to allow you in. And very often, as part of the VPN, if you're using an extranet to let somebody in, maybe vendor managing your inventory, we will allow them in to only specific areas. Okay, if it's power supply guy, the only thing we're gonna partition that off, and we're gonna say, power supply guy, you can see only our inventory of power supplies. You may allow them into, you may also expand it into letting them see what your current sales are. So they say, oh man, yeah, right now they have 20 power supplies on hand, and man, they've got orders for 2,000. We better make a whole bunch of these or start communicating with them, seeing, hey, do you want us to start sending these? So that's, you may give them a little more, depending on what makes sense for your business model. But you create a VPN so they have a secure way to get in. And why do we do that? Once again, you don't want, cybersecurity kind of stuff. If I'm Joe Bad Guy and competitor against these guys, man, I'm gonna log in and I'm gonna say, oh, okay, it looks like they got, I'm gonna do bad things and crash their system. So we always have to be careful about how we let people into our systems. Who are the kinds of people that we do that? Companies, dealers, customers, suppliers, all the different people, and based on their roles, a dealer, a customer is certainly, you're probably not going to give them access to much. You're going to give them access to maybe information about the product, but you're not going to give them information into your supplies, how many of these things, or whatever. So it's all based on whoever it is, based on what their need is and how you interact with them. There are industry extranets too, used for industry specific kind of transactions, different things, automotive, maybe aerospace type of things. So there are extranets set up specifically for industries. And then there are the last thing here, joint ventures and other business partnerships. Joint ventures usually they're legally more formal way of connecting. Sometimes you'll set up an extranet and it'll be just you just you may have some kind of a contract with them, but when you start getting into joint ventures and partnerships, you may have a contract saying, okay, this is what you're going to do and this is when you can and can't do it. It's much more legally formed relationship, and very 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 uh, very very detailed contracts to make sure that everybody plays nicely and doesn't step beyond what they're supposed to. This is just a diagram just to kind of talk a little bit more about it. Let me change my charts here. Um, uh, so here's the structure of a VPN, like I kind of talked to. You may have my company, here's your company. You may have private internet, you may have a public internet. And if you're not familiar with it, a lot of times, a lot of organizations have this, depending on what the nature of your business is. Um, for every place I've worked, we've had both. And within the sheriff's department, we had our private internet. That's the internet. That's the things that we do internally. Everybody who's authorized or we've gone through the authentication with them can get in and do their specific things. Then we also had public internet. Public internet was the public. The public wants to get in and see, what's going on. There's certain things we made available to them. So you can see, you come in, and once again, as shown here, most cases you have a VPN connection in, and they can, get into your organization. And this is, as a field employee, I had a VPN connection. When I'm sitting here at home, my computer, now I don't have one. During the time when I was working in the sheriff's department, sometimes, something happens, the system crashes, 2:30 in the night. I start getting phone calls. I get out my laptop, my sheriff's department laptop, log in, and I would VPN into the sheriff's department. So it thought, everything I have access just as if I'm in there. I had that secure tunnel, and now I can do anything and everything that I would do if I were sitting in the physical building itself. So those kinds of things, field employees. And so you can see all these different types of connections, how you can VPN or get that tunnel into the organization. And here we go. Last chart, and I talked a little bit about this. I didn't realize it was a lead in, but nonetheless, the last thing, two basic types of corporate portals. You may have a procurement portal where people can go in, procurement being you're buying things, you're for, suppliers, the upstream kind of stuff, automate your business processes. And then your distribution portals, the stuff on the other side, as you're downstream, how am I getting these out to my customers or making my sales? So those are the other types of, those are portals and exchanges, how you get information in and out. And that is the end of chapter 11. Any questions on any of this gripping, wonderful information? Seeing none, or at least right away. I'm good to go. Let me see. All right. Thanks, Josh. All right, if there are no other questions, I am going to stop the share. Don't need that anymore. And I am going to end the recording as well. Yes.